Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. We are worldwide today, and we thank you for joining us. My name is Eileen Goldberg, and I'll be your moderator. I'm with LCI. There's a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go over before we get started. The first is that the webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the recording and the slide deck will be available on our Congress website, lcicongress.org/2021. When you see the red asterisk to the left of the Touch Plan logo, you can click on the Touch Plan logo and it will take you directly to the recording and the slide deck. So be on the lookout for the red asterisk to the left of the Touch Plan logo. It should be up by close of business tomorrow. You'll notice the long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a red arrow to the left of that box. That's the minimization and maximization arrow. Please feel free to use that throughout the presentation so you can view the presentation more closely. You'll also notice at the bottom of that long skinny box is the questions box. Please feel free to put any questions or feedback you have in that box throughout the presentation. We'll be answering them at the end. So if it references a particular slide or a particular subject, please feel free to put that in the question so we can make sure we address it to the right topic of information. So again, this is being recorded. A copy of the recording and the slide deck will be on our Congress website. As soon as the red asterisk appears to the left of the Touch Plan logo, you'll be able to view it. Long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen, minimization and maximization arrow. Please put any feedback or questions that you have into the questions box. They'll be answered at the end of the presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Piland from Touch Plan, who will be putting on our presentation for you. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, really excited to share this idea that I've had for quite some time with you. And generally, we're going to be talking about unlocking this concept, this idea of extreme collaboration and leveraging lean principles, last planner system, and technology to do that. So let's dive right in. Quick introduction. So again, I'm Andrew Piland, formerly a superintendent at Whiting-Turner. I worked there for about 5 years. Before that, I was military, actually a military officer, and spent a little time as an engineer in the oil field post-military. But I really took a lot of the ideas and concepts about planning and communication from things that I learned in the military. And when I came to construction, I didn't quite see. I knew we had to be able to plan and communicate better, but I just didn't quite see the system in construction like we had in the military. And I couldn't necessarily go and apply maybe a 5-paragraph order to how we're going to go pour a slab or start framing. But I was certainly hungry and looking for a better way to plan and communicate. And I did that, and I found that with Last Planner. And was able to leverage that with technology, particularly Touch Plan. So here we'll talk about unlocking that extreme collaboration piece, and it's really there's two avenues that we have to set in place to be able to do that. And I think the foundation for that extreme collaboration is establishing a leadership framework and a culture on the team and for the project that first starts with I think the most foundational lean principle, and that's respect for people. From there, we'll talk about going from building off of that culture, building off that foundation, and starting to frame out some real physical and administrative controls that we can apply to our day-to-day planning communication cadence to really just give everyone a framework in which they can freely collaborate and contribute to the team. So after that, we'll do some Q&A. Really excited to hear what you all might have for me. I'm always open to hearing lessons learned, maybe some tweaks, maybe some things that you've seen. So really looking forward to that part of the webinar. But let's go ahead and start and talk about leadership framework and establishing just that culture of respect for people across the job site. So, this idea really was communicated very well, actually in a TED Talk of all things by a man named Jim Kalbach, and he calls his TED Talk Jazz Improvisation for Radical Collaboration. And his basic idea is that in jazz, there's extreme form of teamwork and collaboration that exists, and they're able to do that because they have a standard framework by which all jazz pieces are played and done. But within that framework, everyone is free to collaborate and really improvise. So he talks about, the leader will establish a certain key that they're going to play in, and he'll establish a certain structure. So he mentioned that AABA standard jazz format, and everyone follows along with that and understands that framework. But within that, they're able to just freely explore what they can do with the music. The next big idea he talks about is this concept of big ears, which I really think ties very well with respect for people. And what he says is, everyone in a jazz ensemble has to have big ears. They have to listen to other people more than they're listening to themselves talk. And so that really struck me, because I think a lot of time we will show up to pole plan meetings and we'll get maybe a new team, and we're kind of in that storming phase of building a team, and everyone just wants to be heard. Everyone wants to get their opinions and thoughts and ideas out there. And as the leadership on the job site, as a superintendent, the lead project manager, letting some of that come out a little bit, and not necessarily imposing your will immediately right off the bat. But we'll get into that in this next topic. But really having big ears, listening to people, hearing what they have to say, and facilitating collaboration through asking questions is a big part of that. So we'll transition off this slide with this quote. Structured noise is music. Without structure, it's just noise. Make music, not noise. And I think in a really good planning session, a really good collaboration session, it almost sounds like music. People are handing things off between each other, and no one's really stepping on each other's conversation, and everyone's engaged. So it's maybe not quite making jazz, but we're certainly collecting data and building plans together. So the next piece here, a bit of practical application to this is to put in this idea of divergent and convergent collaboration. And this comes with a book called How We Work Together, Getting to Yes and the Art of Business Improv by Bob Piland. And he basically talks about how, along the lines of performing arts from the previous example, where people in comedic improv, from acting improv, they're able to feed off each other and collaborate and really do this sort of improvisation routine and have this extreme sort of teamwork. And the one thing that he really talks about is you have to enable divergent and convergent collaboration. So what do I mean by that? Divergent collaboration is basically, let's get things on the wall. Let's everybody put out their ideas. Let's everyone talk about how we see the problem. And we do that. Imagine a phase plan session or a pole plan session where we all show up and we're talking about, all right, because everyone's going to see the problem differently. So we're all showing up, we all have our idea, we all have our thoughts, we all have our opinions. And as the leader, as the facilitator of that particular session, enable time for divergent collaboration. I've got that bullet in there, admiring the problem. Let everyone admire the problem. Let's all get our thoughts out on the paper. But with that, don't just let it run freely and let it run wild for the duration of the meeting. We have to kind of stop at a certain point and bring that back to where we go from admiring the problem to solving the problem. And that's where convergent collaboration comes in. So once we've given everyone, they're allowed a lot of time to talk about how they see the problem from their point of view. Have a marker in your session where say we're doing a day-long phase plan meeting. We're all meeting to talk about how we're going to start the job and really frame this thing out. By the time we have lunch, by the time we come back from lunch, we should probably really start on that convergent collaboration. Same thing if it's a weekly work plan meeting. 30 minutes, if it's an hour long, 30 minutes in, we should be done with divergent collaboration and really start getting convergent and solving the problem. And really, one trick that he really uses to facilitate both divergent and convergent collaboration is in the title of his book, and he calls it using yes and. So while we're talking with someone, let's say someone has an idea about, hey, I really think I should start on this part of the job site. I really think I need to start framing in this part of the slab. and you as a superintendent, you understand, like, that's probably not the right place to go. I've got other things planned for that area. Instead of saying yes, but, and totally negating everything they've said, because that word but is somewhat of an invalidator. It erases everything that was said before it. Instead, say yes and that's all you're doing. You're still presenting your idea as perhaps a better way to go, as perhaps the way you would like them to go. But saying yes and vice yes but is a pretty powerful tool. And personally, I've seen it work in my endeavors now. We're in business school, as I'm collaborating with teams and I'm working with people. I wish that yes and is something I had known as a superintendent, because I think it really could have been much more powerful than my standard. Yeah, but we're actually going to do this. So there's a nugget you can take with you. Next, so let's talk about, we established the leadership, the culture, given some ideas to how to handle that particular collaboration session. Let's talk about some administrative and physical controls, things that I've done that I've seen have worked for me. And we'll start off with our administrative controls. So let's talk about reliable times. Every job site has its own planning and communication cadence. So every job site is either having a weekly work plan where they bring in all the trades in a room and they just talk about what's going on that week. Some will have a very structured phase plan, which maybe you do quarterly, or you'll do it by work breakdown structure, have a phase plan from which you do weekly work plans, from which you do daily check-ins and huddles. And that's great. Have your cadence, set it up, and keep those times reliable and very consistent. I think the only thing that should maybe trump one of those meetings would be perhaps a site-wide safety stand down where you really have to get everyone in a room and talk about something very serious. But other than that, I would say those meeting times and that cadence is absolutely sacred. And there's almost no more important thing we do that day than talk about what we did yesterday or what we're doing tomorrow or what we're doing that week. So, the next thing with that is keeping people accountable and keeping that consistent. So one trick that I had was I had an actual roster on the wall of the trades I expected to be at that meeting. If someone didn't show up, they were getting a phone call immediately. Within the first minute of that meeting. And over time, you make the decision whether you replace them with someone else if they're not showing up, or they jump in and they get with the program and they contribute. So keeping those times reliable is incredibly important. Next is having an agenda before we show up. So a good rule is to send out your milestones about 48 hours in advance. Your milestones, your deliverables, whatever you want to call it. But let's say we're having a collaboration session on Monday morning. By Wednesday evening, you should be sending out the things to everyone involved, the things you're expecting to see at the end of that collaboration session on Monday morning, at the end of that weekly work plan. And the reason it gives everyone, okay, hey, the leader of the job is forward thinking. They're flying this airplane. They're thinking more than one day ahead, and they're looking at more than what's right in front of them. But two, it gives people the opportunity to prepare and provide even better input. So you can tell really quickly after you start sending these out when the people who show up prepared and people who don't. And it gives you an idea as a leader, who you need to maybe spend a little more time with. And get them into the program and get them on board. So having that agenda, doing your homework beforehand, and expecting others to do their homework as well is really big. Now, I know you might be thinking, well, hey, I can barely get my trades to show up to the meeting. How am I going to get them to do any homework beforehand? I think it comes with consistency, going back to that first point, just having that standard meeting time regardless, and just getting them there. There are other people who will start seeing the benefit quickly, and other people who will be contributing well and succeeding as a result, and they'll see that. And so that was my approach: is let's just get everyone there. If they're not contributing right off the bat, great. If they're not doing their homework up front, okay, fine. But I'll see that and I'll start addressing that with them. And maybe you have to hold their hand a bit, but you as leadership of the job, that's what we get paid to do is pull everyone across the finish line. So next, structure. So I think going back a bit to that divergent collaboration phase, particularly with a new team, people really want to talk and really want to be heard and really want to assert their perception of the problem. And having an actual structure around allowing that is a good way to do that. It keeps one particular individual from railroading the meeting. And so what I'd recommend, two things, is giving a very specific allotted amount of time on which we do that divergent collaboration. So if it's in a weekly work plan, and we say, hey, all right, we're going to do this for 30 minutes, we'll just kind of admire the problem. I have 10 trades in there, great, everyone gets 3 minutes to talk about how they see it. And we're going through a rapid fire. And you actually have someone keeping a clock of, all right, hey, your time is now, go. And they talk 3 minutes, cut them off, say, hey, got it, anything else, put it on the parking lot and let's go. And that brings me to my next piece, is having a parking lot at a meeting, where if someone decides they want to just talk about, some emotionally charged tangent, some frustration they had the day before, as a facilitator, say, hey, look, got you, that's great, let's put it on the parking lot. We can stick after and talk about this a little bit. But keeping one person from dominating the meeting and everyone just glazing out is absolutely on us as leadership of the job site to make sure that doesn't happen. So those are 3 really administrative controls for just generally within a meeting. I think I found them. I know I found them to be effective. You just have to stick with it. I think staying just disciplined about sticking with those 3 particular items, and you give it a month, give it 2 months, and you'll start to see results there. You won't see it right away, but it might get a little worse before it gets better, but it will get better. All right, so some just ideas that I had from setting up the room, things that I've done, things I've played with and experimented with. So I had a foreman, as a superintendent with a mechanical contractor, tell me, he said, hey, his company did a review, a study on all their employees, and what they were trying to find out is how people learn and receive communication best. And he said what they found was that most people learn best within his particular company, and I think this applies to all construction. I'm pretty confident this applies to all construction, where he said most people at his company learn best are kinesthetic or visual learners, meaning they learn best by doing or seeing. And so having heard that and talking with him, I applied that principle to how I set up my space. So what I did was took sticky notes off the board, put them onto a monitor, in touch plan, and then I put drawings on the wall, put maps on the wall. People don't talk and really, they can't collaborate around particular activities on the board. But what I saw really unlocked, that sort of extreme collaboration, was when people got shoulder to shoulder around a set of drawings, where they're actually pointing to locations that they're going to work, or taking a dry erase marker and circling it and writing out how they plan to attack the job site. That was really powerful. And so setting up and using as many visuals as possible. So one specific example, I would have a full size set of drawings on the wall, maybe an architectural set, to kind of give everyone an orientation. And then as we went along and we were talking about very specific details within the project, I would print out maybe that detail. Maybe we're building like a pre-engineered building or something. I would put 2 or 3 drawing sheets up on the wall next to that, so they can really get detailed and specific about where they're working and what it is they're talking about. And because I think I know what I've seen in the past is, without those drawings, without those visuals, you'll see people start to talk with their hands a lot, and they'll start to talk past each other because they see the job site from a different frame of reference. Everyone sees the job site differently. And so having that common ground, that visual on the wall where someone can point and say, right there is where I'm working, that specific location. What are you going to do about this? How do we attack this? Is incredibly powerful. The next piece there is keeping them at about 4 to 6 feet above the ground. No one likes to bend over and scrunch, and no one can really see. No one, keeping things at roughly eye level is a great way to do that. Maybe have some reference documents, underneath. Maybe have like an overall printout of the P6 schedule underneath your visuals. Just kind of give everyone some reference, but keeping your visuals at eye level and making it easy where they can write and mark them up is incredibly important. Last thing, human factors within these collaboration sessions. So everyone's hot, everyone's tired, maybe everyone's freezing cold. Those all impact how we plan, how we interact with each other. And coming into a meeting where we've got to talk, there's always going to be a bit of conflict. There's always what I call creative tension going on. Those human factors play even more into that. So one thing that I really tried to avoid and I found success with was getting rid of chairs in these meetings. So making it clear that where we're talking is not a break space. It's not a hammock. It has to be comfortable. It has to kind of isolate and insulate people so they're free to think. But it's not a break space. It's not a place to hang out. So the next thing was no eating. If we're having a 8 o'clock meeting where we're talking about our daily huddle or our weekly work plan, if one of the trades opens up a burrito they got off a food truck, everyone within their immediate vicinity is no longer paying attention to what the facilitator is talking about. They're paying attention to where the heck they got that and how they can get one as soon as the meeting's over. So yeah, no chairs, no eating, two really simple things. And definitely have water available. Definitely give yourself enough space. Obviously, in a it's a biologically compromised environment that we've been in the last 2 years almost. You have to be very cognizant of personal space. And so, I would make sure you're not cramming people in, but just if you don't take anything else away, that no chairs, no eating thing will really help you get over a lot of the human factors you might see. So with that, that's all I had to talk about. I'll go ahead and open it up to questions, and I'm happy to hear other things that you might have seen, suggestions, anything like that.
So again, the questions box is at the bottom. Please put any questions you have. We're also going to be doing a quick plus delta. And for those of you who are not familiar with the term, pluses are things you thought added value to the presentation, and deltas are things you think we should change so we can add value to the presentation. In the spirit of lean and continuous improvement, we absolutely want that feedback from. Go into how touch plan fits into all of this. I know you mentioned touch plan a couple times, putting sticky notes in touch plan instead of on the boards and things like that. So how does technology like touch plan fit in with the meeting plan, the cadence that you were talking about?
Yeah, totally. So touch plan was designed around last planner. So you have this idea that does technology drive process or does process drive technology? Touch plan was absolutely driven by process. And so we have it set up where you can build an actual phase plan and build your sequence, and that you would do something like that in a phase plan meeting, right? As a part of your normal meeting cadence. We have the promise line in touch plan where you talk about as you're finishing your weekly work plan meeting, you drag that promise period across the activities that you've collaborated around. You click it, it locks in those promises, and then you start talking. Then you go into your daily work meeting, and every day as those activities are supposed to finish, you talk about them there. And so it's really, the software is built around that standard cadence and how we would normally just run a job site on day to day. And it really helps us collect data as we're talking about it. Because I think a lot of times we're talking about things and a lot of data is being exchanged between people, but none of it's being captured. And that's what TouchPlan facilitates.
Fantastic. It's good to know that there's software out there that actually does that. So
yeah,
it's good to hear. Good to hear. These questions are all, they came in when that meeting cadence portion was up there. So I just wanted to let you know that's where we're focusing right now.
Yeah.
Did you receive pushback when you were first implementing these meeting rules?
Totally. 100%. Yeah. So because we'd always done it one particular way before. So if we're having, if we're having a meeting where we're used to everyone sitting down in chairs, and maybe something that could have taken an hour is taking 2 hours, people kind of get used to that. Um, and when I actually opened up a space specifically for planning, I had the privilege, the opportunity to design a pull plan space. And the first meeting we had there wasn't a chair in the room, and everyone kind of looked around and started walking around the building looking for chairs. I was like, hey, no, guys, sorry, we're standing up. Let's get in, let's get out. Let's keep the sense of urgency going. There's certainly some grumbling, but I think after a while they appreciated. All right, we're in and out. We don't have these long drawn out meetings that just take forever and we don't get anything done. So it maybe perhaps a bit of friction at the beginning, but followed by benefit pretty shortly thereafter.
Did you have to get buy-in from anybody to do that at first, or was it just kind of I'm doing it and everyone else is just going to have to fall in line?
The chairs thing, that was sort of the
No, I
unraveling.
mean the whole new
Oh,
meeting cadence thing.
oh yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. We had to have trainings beforehand. You had to really sit down with people. I didn't have anyone just show up and say, okay, this is what we're doing now. We actually had 2 training sessions. One with someone at Whiting Turner, still seasoned mentor, Jeff Betts, who's vice president of operations. He came in and trained the Whiting Turner team first, and told us about touch plan. And then later we brought in key trade leadership and trained them, not just in touch plan, but in last planner, where hey, we're starting to train people and say, hey, look, we hear there's a problem. We hear that you feel like you're not being heard, and 2, that this job could be built much better. Here's a structured way around which we're going to do that and unlock that collaboration. So we had to have that training piece first. People got excited about it, and we started doing it. So it's definitely a gradual ramp up to establishing a program and a process like that.
So you mentioned the training, and you mentioned in the administration portion that there's a lot of changes that you have to go through. No chairs, no food, all the collaboration, possibly using touch plan, taking the stickies off the board. What's the most important change that you should prioritize first, in your opinion?
Yeah, the very first thing. Well, I think first, if respect for people isn't at the top of the list, maybe talk about that, maybe address that. If there's a lot of interpersonal conflict, and if you have a lot of maybe negative emotion flying your way on a regular basis, maybe take a step back and look at that. But from there, I guess the practical, physical would be getting sticky notes off the wall and putting drawings on the board. People really collaborate and really talk about and really can visualize a job and build things together around drawings. Stickies and activities and P6, touch plan, whatever it is, that certainly helps, and we absolutely have to have them. But people build things with drawings. They don't build things with activities in a schedule.
So you talk a lot about respect for people, and that is one of the 6 tenets of lean, and that is the main tenet of lean. The other 5 are built around respect for people, as you had mentioned before.
Yeah.
And you also just mentioned if people don't understand respect for people, or if they don't follow respect for people, that's the first thing people have to concentrate on. How do you get people to buy in to that respect for people mentality if they're not quite there?
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot, Andrew, and I apologize, but that actually came in as a question, and
I
I think it's a
love it.
good one.
No, it is. It's absolutely phenomenal. So how do you get that buy-in into respect for people? I mean, I think you just ask the question, like, do you want to go home frustrated and constantly running through interpersonal conflict every time you go home to your family? I certainly don't think so. And I know from personal experience, there's a time when I was dealing with that, right? Where you're always, looking at the other side as them being messed up, them being the ones that are causing you problems, and they're the reason that this job's behind. And gosh, if they would just get on board with what I'm trying to do, why can't they just get with the program? And after a while, having done some reading, got some mentoring, you kind of step back and you say you go about that by trying to understand their side, by going over and crossing that boundary, sitting down, carving out time, and again having a structure by which you pull this information from them. You obviously don't let them just run off into an emotional tirade, but you try to get understanding, I would say, first and foremost. And I think again, also going back to that concept of big ears, right? That ties in perfectly. If you're doing more listening than you are talking, you're probably making headway with someone. So that'd be the first thing I'd recommend.
Fantastic. Well, we are out of time. So Elsie,
Okay.
I would like to thank Andrew Piland and TouchPlan for presenting today, and all of you for attending. Thank you very much for attending our second presentation in the Exhibitor Sneak Peek webinar series. We hope you will be able to attend more of them. We thank you so much. And again, we hope to see you on our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.